Hello and welcome back to Automox's Product Talk podcast. I am your host, Steph Rizzuto. And if you're new here, I am one of the product team members here at Automox. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about why great security begins with great IT and how Automox helps IT folks achieve that greatness. I have a very special guest here to help me talk through this. If you watch any of our other podcasts, you're probably very familiar with him. But Jason, for folks that are just new in general, can you give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely, Steph. Thanks for having me on. Hello, everyone. My name's Jason Kikta, and I am the CISO and also the Senior VP of Product here at Automox. I've been with the company about 2 years, and before that, I spent about 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps doing IT and cybersecurity.
All right. Thanks for that, Jason. So he is really well suited for today's podcast. He's been over both, and we are going to dive into a little bit about how they feed into each other and how, Automox helps IT folks and what their role is in security. So, Jason, from your perspective, like what role does IT play in security? And maybe you can even speak to some of the challenges that you've seen over the years that prevent IT departments from contributing to the security posture of their company like they should.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, I've been around long enough that I have um I don't know that I would call it a unique perspective, but there's, you really have to have been doing this for a long time, at least 20 years, 25, 30. Now I'm depressing myself.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna
but to
say,
yeah, right. But to have seen the change and how that has shifted over time, because in the beginning there was only IT, right? I started out in the 90s when security was a thing, yes, but it was something done by IT professionals. It was not its own separate discipline. And, it was really mostly limited to passwords. Like getting passwords on things was a big security achievement, and patching wasn't even part of the security equation yet. And yes, there were occasionally patches for security reasons, but patches back then were mailed out on floppy disk or on CDs, and large organizations would there wouldn't even be a regular patching cadence most of the time. It was, hey, their machines come in for maintenance, let's try patching it, or something broke on their machine, it's not functioning the way it ought to, let's try patching it. And so it was very focused around functionality. And I think as well, like most people don't understand, simply because the security patches get so much attention, that, pound for pound, the majority of patches today are functionality patches, right? Even when, Apple releases a big update for Mac OS, and it talks about, having a dozen CVEs that are fixed. That's great, but that is, 10% of the entirety of that patch, and the rest of it is about, fixing functionality, adding functionality, adjusting functionality. And it's security is just not the majority of the patching equation, but it is a critical part, and so it's important to understand that. But security was the responsibility of IT, and then as we evolved on into the 2000s, and we started to see, a lot of the email spread virus events, like I Love You and Anna Kournikova, and then we moved into the big internet worms like Code Red and Nimda. Security started to become to get enough focus that it started to become its own discipline, and we saw the rise of security vendors and security products, not just to and don't think about it just to address a problem, but also you now needed someone whose full-time job was to manage a firewall. And was that really an IT function, or was that more appropriately categorized as a security function that needed security leadership, security management? And so, security essentially grew out of IT, but there are a great many things that are in security imperatives that still remain the responsibility of IT, right? And I think patching and configuration are the two most obvious examples where the configuration of a system, the patch state of a system, those are absolutely security imperatives that the security team is going to have policies around and be very focused on. But implementing them remains and should remain the responsibility of IT, because they're the ones who make those sort of changes on user and workstation and user workstation and server endpoints. So those two teams need to work together, and IT professionals still need to have a good understanding of security and that security mindset.
And what I've seen and experienced is that's where maybe sometimes the challenge comes in, those two teams working together. I've seen it to where they don't necessarily always not speaking the same language, maybe not, not working as cohesively as they should. Can you, in your mind, what about Automox helps them do that?
Yeah, that's where I think we've taken a fundamentally different approach than a lot of other folks in this space, and where, as you and I on the product team try and drive the product forward, we've started asking a lot more critical questions about what are the sort of tasks that an IT team needs to not only cover for their own responsibilities, but be able to cover because of a demand signal or requirement set down by their security or their compliance organization, and trying to calibrate the product to be able to better meet those needs, right? So an increased focus on highlighting that work was done and delivering it via API, because we see so much um, demand for being able to export the results of patching and configuration to an outside tool so that it can be counted for security or compliance purposes, and rather than just internal reporting for IT benefit. Moving the move that we're making from a deferral based system to a deadline based system, I think, is a great example, right? Deferrals are a very IT centric concept of, I'm going to give this patch. The user might not be able to do it right now. I'm going to let them, hit pause a few times and come back to it later. And that's really an adaptation of the days of touch labor, where someone from IT would literally walk into your office space and say, "Hey, I'm from IT. I need to do patches on all the computers in this room. Can I do it right now?" And you'd have a few people who weren't there to log in, or maybe that wasn't an issue, but they would say, "Hey, I'm in the middle of something. Can you come back later?" And so a deferral is, "Can you come back later?" And it doesn't really take into account the modern security and compliance imperative of, you need to have this accomplished by a deadline. And so by moving to a deadline based system where you can say it must be done by this date and time, you may do it at any time at your leisure in between now and then. It's here, it's ready, it's always available. But the deadline is the deadline. That's a more modern way of thinking about it. And so that's where we're trying to do everything from the way policies flow and integrate with each other, to the kind of proof of work that you're able to produce, to the end user experience, really letting IT cover those security imperatives, but do them in a style that's conducive to the normal IT workflow and cuts down on their labor.
Yeah, well said. We're really excited about that shift too, from deferrals to deadline.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a big one. It's one of those things that it seems minor, but it has really good impact, and it gets people thinking, right? Because deadlines are how people express it, right? When I wearing my CISO or CISO, depending on how you want to pronounce it, I've never heard people agree on that. But when they want to focus in on, or sorry, when they get a task related to that, they go and they, it's given as a deadline. It's not, hey, I want it done,
Right.
I want it done this week, but you can give them 3 deferrals of 8 hours each. Like, no one says that. They say, I need this done by the end of the day on Friday, right? And so that is a very direct translation of, I have received this task from management. This is when I need to have it accomplished by, and this just like lets them really orient on it in that way and be assured that they're going to achieve the outcome that they need, right? And so it's that outcome assurance portion that I think, where having a product that is simple and reliable and just, really straightforward, it does what it says. It's you can really rely on those results. That's where it's really important. And again, it's not just on patches, it's configurations as well of, you have a set of things that you want to assure every single, endpoint has each and every day, right? Is the password policy in compliance? Is the, this security configuration compliance? Are these services shut down? Are these things enabled? Do I see these agents on the machine? And being able to run a worklet to run and go and execute that evaluation code to say, is this the case on this machine? And then if not, move into that remediation code to be able to fix that result and let you know that something was out of compliance. But you're still assured that whether it was in or out of compliance, it is now in compliance as of the time that I set that workload each day, and it's ready to go for the workday. That's really, really important. And so those are the kinds of things that we focus on and try and just make easier each and every day.
Yep. Well, I feel like we could talk about this all day, and there are all kinds of other examples we could use. But as we come to a close, do you have any final thoughts that you kind of want to share, get out there?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would leave the audience with is, you should think as an IT team, you should think cohesively about your stack and what tools you want in your stack, and if those tools are, um, really oriented to your use case or not. And so the example I give of that is, one thing that I'm passionate about on the security side is that security ought to be free, right? You should not have to pay an upcharge to cover security imperatives in your IT tool. You shouldn't be paying extra for single sign-on or multi-factor authentication or audit logs. Those should all just be included. And so, if other tooling is charging you a premium for that, then they're probably not as interested in your needs as a customer. They're really just interested in extracting the maximum value. And I think it's a very wrong-headed way of doing it. It's a cynical way of doing business, because you can make good money by simply focusing on your customers' needs and fulfilling them really well. And I feel like that's the culture that we've set and we maintain here at Automox. And I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Agreed. Agreed and well said. Well, as always, thanks for joining us, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.